Hey guys, how's it going? This is the Stupendous Wave, and in this video we are talking about some new information that we've gotten from Supreme Leader Snoke, or rather about Supreme Leader Snoke, and this is from an Empire interview that Andy Serkis did, and it's led to a lot of people freaking out essentially to what he says, and has led a lot of people to believe that he is extremely tall. I'm not talking like 10 feet tall. Like, people are saying that he is 30 feet tall. And obviously, to me, this seems a little bit absurd. I think that they're really not grasping what Andy Serkis really said in this interview. But nonetheless, I thought I would touch on it. It's definitely interesting, and I'm definitely not ruling out that he could be 30 feet tall. I just think it's highly unlikely. So I'm going to go ahead and read a little piece of the Empire Magazine interview to you guys, and then I'll share my thoughts on it, and we'll talk about a little bit more what he talks about, because he talks about later on in the interview some of what Snoke is all about. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you, and then we'll go into talking about it. It was quite an unusual situation, Serkis tells us in the new issue of Empire. I worked specifically with Donald Gleason and with Adam Driver. My first day was basically standing on a 25-foot podium doing Lord Snoke, without the faintest idea what he looked like, or in fact who he was. I was very high up and totally on my own, away from everybody else, but acting with them. So this is interesting. We hear here that he's on a podium, and of course that's not unusual for Star Wars characters, especially with characters like the Emperor. We've seen them before on podiums in the EU and in other Star Wars media. But it's interesting here, and this is kind of what has led a lot of people to believe that he could be really 30 feet tall, or even above 30 feet tall, is that he had to stand on this podium just because of his large height and stature, not because he was actually being on a podium or the character was on a podium. Now, it's very interesting, and he goes on later to talk about how Supreme Leader Snoke is in fact very large and a tall individual, but personally, my personal opinion is that he's still going to be very tall, very large, but he's not going to be anywhere near 30 feet tall. That's 5 feet taller than the King Kong that we got in 2005, guys. That's absolutely gigantic, especially for a Star Wars character. I'm not saying that it's undoable or it's not possible, but I just think that it's very unlikely. I would put him most likely in a height range of anywhere from 7 to like 10 feet at the most, but I think that mostly it's just the podium that's giving him this height. But as always, I could be wrong, and he could very well end up being 30 feet tall, which is insane. Now, apparently at the time, or the first day, which is really all that he explains as his time as Leader Snoke is what he calls it, he really only got to work with 2 actors, Donald Gleason and Adam Driver, which we know are really 2 of the biggest baddies, along with Captain Phasma, who's not really mentioned. But with Snoke, General Hux, and Kylo Ren all together filming a scene that's very cool, I assume that they're going to be talking about some very important stuff. And in fact, later on, Andy Serkis goes on in this interview specifically, and he talks about how this is the scariest character that he's ever played, and he's a very interesting character. And what I'd like to touch on is that he also talks about how Supreme Leader Snoke is very powerful in the dark side of the Force. He has a lot of knowledge, but at the same time he's very vulnerable because he suffered a prior injury. Now, when I heard this, I was thinking of some of the very early plot leaks that we got for The Force Awakens, which were talking about actually Kylo Ren having experienced a very grievous injury and having to have a lot of cybernetics over him. But now what I'm thinking is this is really falling more in lines with Supreme Leader Snoke, that he suffered a grievous injury and had to be outfitted with a lot of cybernetics, and now is what we essentially get with Supreme Leader Snoke. Now, I know that I've touched on this before, but the concept art that was released that a lot of people were thinking was Kylo Ren because the character in the concept art, and it's like a cybernetic enhanced individual, because obviously they appear as if they've suffered a grievous injury. But with this concept art that was released, everybody assumed, after we actually saw Kylo Ren in the trailer speaking to the Darth Vader mask, that this was Kylo Ren. But again, talking back or reading back in this interview, hearing Andy Serkis talk about his character Supreme Leader Snoke having suffered a grievous injury, I'm kind of thinking back again. It's a little bit unlikely, but is that character in that concept art Supreme Leader Snoke? Now, the character in the concept art, since we see him in proximity to a prop that we actually have a good idea of what the scale is, that being the Darth Vader helmet, obviously, we really get a good idea that this guy is nowhere near 30 feet tall, because like I said, he's holding a Darth Vader helmet, which is something that we all know. We all know the relative size of the Darth Vader helmet, and as I stated, he still could be very tall, but 30 feet is a little bit out there. I know a lot of people have been freaking out over this, saying, oh my gosh, 30 feet tall, this is terrible, what are they doing? But I think that it's mostly just the podium giving him that size. Not to say, as always, that he's obviously going to be large, but like I said earlier, 7 to 10 feet. So anyway, guys, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you guys think about this? Do you guys see Supreme Leader Snoke being 30 feet tall, or are you with me, where it's just kind of out there? So anyway, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and have a great day.